Hello and welcome to another game with the black pieces. Our opponent plays e4, we're going to respond to e5. Knight f3, knight c6. And we get an Italian game. I'm going to go ahead and play knight f6, inviting the fried liver attack because it's an interesting line. Their best move is to take. Now we relocate the knight to a5, attacking the bishop. Their best move here is bishop e5 check, after which we will block the check with... okay, so this is not a good move. This is not a good move. Yeah, this is not a good move because we take the bishop, they recapture, and now we take the pawn with an attack on the knight. Now I can probably just kick the knight again, but let's not rush this. This is my first time actually getting this line on the board. I'm pretty sure f5 looks nice. If I play f5, I have to be prepared for queen h5 check though. And if the knight were better placed, they'd maybe be able to sack themselves here. And after I recaptured, they'd win my rook. But the knight is not so well placed. So the question I'm really asking myself then is, after f5, if queen h5 check, is g3 a good move? And the answer is yes, because two pieces would be hanging at the same time. So it would be to their detriment to play queen h5 check here. They'd be losing a piece. So the knight is going to have to relocate. And once it does, I could kick the piece again. I could kick the piece again, and if the knight relocates here, then I have bishop to f5, and if their queen comes down to check me here, I could just drop the bishop back. But I could also just, at this point, start developing my pieces, getting my other pieces into the game, and that also looks fairly sensible. So something like bishop c5, bishop d6. Question is, what diagonal do I want my bishop on? We can only assume my opponent's going to castle this way. So, would I like the bishop to eventually be lasering the h2 pawn or the f2 pawn? Thing is, if I position myself on this diagonal, then if I kick this knight, I'm not blocking my own bishop with these pawns. So, let's go ahead and play bishop to c5. See how my opponent responds. I'm not afraid of this check, and there's no pin on this pawn. Well, there is a pin on this pawn if the knight recaptures here, but I mean, firstly, the queen would just simply be on h5. We would just capture the piece, and also the bishop could recapture if the knight took here. So all is fine. All is absolutely fine. I'm kind of eyeing the fact that I have this tempo winning move at any time, and looking for the best moment to play it. If I were to play here and my opponent were to not castle, then I could play here, and when the knight moves, I'm snapping this piece off the board. If I play here and my opponent does castle, then I'm likely to want to reposition my bishop maybe. Open things up and have my sights. Maybe I would kick the knight anyway. Where's the knight going to go? Here. Relocate this knight this way maybe. It looks quite strong. We're going to play here. Okay, so my opponent plays queen to h5, looking for a queen trade. What happens if I make this queen trade? Their knight ends up on h5. Is that a good square for their knight? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I'm going to take the knight, the queen, and allow the knight to h5, because if I play this move, and my opponent just say castles, they might find that their knight is trapped. This works too. Okay, so I capture here, my opponent captures back like this. They might win this pawn. But if I capture here and my opponent captures back like this, let's give my opponent more to think about. So, well, that actually could be a mistake. What I was thinking was, bishop to protect my knight. So if knight takes, I play here, and I'm eyeing this pawn. It's giving my opponent more problems. But then, they do have this move, which hits both bishops at once. But I can play b6 there. Problem is, they could then push the pawn, drop back. I'm losing my bishop. But, let's see. If I play here and they take here and I take here, and they play here and I go after the pawn, the rook comes here. And now, I'm definitely losing something. So I can't play bishop here sensibly. But if I take here and they take here and I push here, then they play this rook move. Then I'm just going back, hitting the rook. And it doesn't really matter whether either the bishop or the rook picks up the pawn. I'm still picking up the knight. Where else would the knight go? Ah, here. Once this is pushed, well, the rook still covers this square. I had been thinking that I would scoop this piece back up with my knight. Obviously, I can't pick it back up with the pawn if the pawn has advanced, but the rook is still here to do that job. So even here, the knight is lost. So I think we just capture here, and I advance this pawn, and I think I'm winning a piece. I'm losing a pawn in the process, for certain, but I'm picking up the piece. Capturing with the pawn to open up the file on their king, and also because if I capture with the rook, after he captures back like this, he's kind of hitting two things at once. This is not so nice. Alright, so I'm ahead of material, but down in time. So as long as I keep things together, use my time wisely, we should be okay. I've got to get this bishop into the game somehow, and allow my other rook to come into the game. So I'm thinking my bishops are going to have these nice long diagonals, if I have any say in the matter. Any trade now is going to be good. If I can trade my dark squared bishop for my opponent's dark squared bishop, if I can tempt my opponent to trade rooks, this is all going to suit me just fine. Just going to maybe have to move a little bit quicker now. So this is maybe a mistake, because this pawn is pinned. So they'd have to recapture like this. And when they do, I will pick up the pawn. Yeah, so now I'm picking up this pawn C. And okay, so if I pick up with the bishop, king could come here, and this is protected. But if I take with the rook, I'm targeting this pawn and also a discovered attack on the king. So I think taking with the rook is a lot better, and my opponent might resign here. No, they don't. Okay, so they move out the way of the discovered attack, but now I'm just picking up this pawn as well. And as we can see, my opponent's position is really starting to crumble. I'm just going to check my opponent's king. They're going to have to start. Well, no, this is game over. Yeah, this is game over. There's nothing for them to do other than to sack the rook. Okay, let's quickly have a look at the analysis for that game. I'm going to show you where my opponent went wrong. So typically, in this line of the fried liver, when black plays d5, you want to go ahead and capture, forcing their knight to a5, repurposing their knight to attack the bishop. And rather than dropping back, you want to deliver this check, right? Then we play c6. And the idea is that after pawn takes, we take back with the pawn, hitting the bishop. And actually, there's this move, queen f3, that you can play before moving the bishop. Why is that? Well, let's take a look. Pawn takes, we're hitting the bishop. The bishop has to move. But if we play queen f3, right, and now the pawn takes, whoops, we're just losing our rook. So we don't want to do that. So we can actually play this move. And now, yeah, best move for black is bishop e7. And oddly enough, as unnatural as it seems, because it blocks in our d-pawn, the best move when relocating this bishop is bishop to d3. Bishop e2 is also okay, but it's not as good as bishop d3. And black will just go ahead and castle here, and we'll have ourselves a nice game where this bishop is positioned a little bit awkwardly, but also so is this a5 knight. What our opponent goes ahead and does instead in this game is drop the bishop back. Well, you've brought the knight here so that the bishop and the knight can both be targeting this f7 pawn. So maybe that's the idea. My opponent's thinking, okay, well, if I can advance this pawn, I've regained this pressure on f7. But what they're forgetting is simply, when I take this piece and they recapture, doubling their pawns, fair enough, they're opening up prospects for their rook on the a file, but they are doubling up their pawns. Now I'm recapturing the center pawn and also winning a tempo on the knight. Or they're going to have to strike in the center immediately, defending the knight with the bishop. Then I have bishop e7, or even this computer is liking this check here, because I think... No, yes, it's changing its mind. I thought, yeah, bishop e7 is better. That's what my instinct would have told me, which is we're hitting the knight twice now, so you're going to have to add another defender or drop the knight back. After which, things are just looking pretty fine, if not a little bit better for black, because they have a better pawn structure, and they're going to be faster to castle, unless white castles now, but they're still going to have to spend a tempo dealing with this pawn in the center of the board. So that's the appropriate way to play against this particular line. You want to come and check here first and get this. Queen f3 is a lovely move to remember. This is already losing because your pieces are just going to be kicked all the way back, and black is going to win too many tempi and be able to develop very, 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 very easily. I hope you enjoyed the game and the analysis. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.